Hi, I'm Krista Redpath, and you are listening to Where Are They Now?, a summer podcast series brought to you by Krista Redpath Media, where we break down the game, elevate the story, and champion the female voice.
A continuation of our Where Are They Now series, and our guest this week, a good one, a fan favorite, somebody that the city of Missoula certainly loved big time, and one of the great small school basketball players ever from the state of Montana. Katie Edwards, our guest. She was an All-Big Sky player for the Lady Griz in the early 2000s after a state championship career at both Denton High School and Fergus County High School in Lewistown. So it was fun catching up with Katie earlier this week. But we really appreciate Ryan and Miller Law for all their support of all the things we do. Ryan and Miller is a law firm specializing in personal injury and criminal defense. They handle cases across the state of Montana and focus in specific areas of law to ensure they provide their clients with the best representation. Their firm proudly handles automobile accidents, medical malpractice claims, wrongful death claims, DUIs, and criminal charges. They have a 24/7 consulting service that's free, so you can call them anytime. You can also visit and find online ryanmillerlaw.com. Let's talk about Katie Edwards a little bit, because this is the thing that we love about Montana, right? And this is something that's happened so often in both Griz football and Lady Griz basketball. Not as common in the men's basketball ranks, but small town to the big time, right? And I love it. I love the underdog mentality that you can hone, but also the championship mentality. And that's Katie Edwards in a nutshell, right? Like, she was a champion all throughout high school, came into Montana, didn't know what she was going to become. She becomes a 1,000-point scorer, one of the great shooters in Lady Griz history.
Number 7 in Lady Griz history at 1,400 points.
That's crazy.
But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You look at her parents, Lorinda and Wayne, just amazing role models. Wayne, after a 30-year banking career, is now an author. Coulter, have you seen that? The all-conference tailback.
Amazing.
For Montana State. It's just crazy to see A Stone's Throw, his most recent book, but he's also published Buster the Bridger Mountain Bear, which is a children's book, and also Pacer Cooley Chronicles, which I think you would really enjoy, because that has to do with the playing and coaching days of his hometown, small town Montana. So we got to get these books and share them.
We absolutely do.
We got to give Wayne a shout out on the air.
I got to say, I was slightly embarrassed, because I have talked to Katie Edwards quite a bit throughout my career. I've interviewed her several times for various feature stories, etc. I knew she was cousins with John Edwards, Johnny Montana, the quarterback of the 2001 Grizzlies. I knew that he is the son of Cliff Edwards. I missed the memo that Cliff and Wayne are brothers. I had no idea. I also know Wayne Edwards, the great tailback for Montana State when they won the 76 national championship. I totally missed the memo that Wayne is Katie's dad. So when you brought up the Bobcat ties, I was like Googling real quick. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that last little tie?
It was crazy to even get Katie
totally.
To the Lady Griz. And she is all Lady Griz all the time. And that's where her heart and soul is. But they are a Bobcat family. And I just think that's really, it shows the testament to our state, right?
Totally.
Where Wayne could advise her, hey, take a look at the Lady Griz over in Missoula.
No doubt. Let's hear from Katie Edwards. We caught up with her. We have 4 different snippets of our conversation to play. And we'll start with the here and now of our Where Are They Now, proudly presented by Ryan and Miller Law, your Montana attorneys. Well, she's back from New York for the first time. This is fun. Katie Edwards, our guest this week on our Where Are They Now series. Katie, thanks so much for joining us. As you mentioned off air, first time to the Big Apple. So what was that like? You're a small town girl. I've never been to New York. I don't have enough guts to go there. It's too big of a town for me. What did you think of the Big Apple?
Well, I felt the same. Yeah, I've never had an opportunity to go. And I was going with a couple girlfriends, one that has kind of lived on and off there for a long time. So I felt comfortable that I had a good tour guide, but I absolutely loved it. It was incredibly beautiful. I felt just very safe, very inspired. It's just the energy in that city is magnetic. You can't explain it until you go experience it. And we were at the tail end of the heat wave, so I felt like I had just done hot yoga walking around the city, because you're just drenched. But it was magnificent. Very, very cool. Highly recommend it. Or you can do it.
I believe in myself. If you can do it, I can do it. But tell us what brought you out there, though, because this is sort of a new venture you have going on. I know we're talking to you from Billings, Montana, but tell us this sort of the entry point to go into New York and this new business venture you got going on.
You bet. So actually, June 1st, 2023, me and 2 girlfriends purchased a kind of a local a local cafe here in town. It's beloved. It's called Caramel Cookie Waffles. And there's like I said, it's a small cafe, and then they manufactured stroop waffles, which is in Dutch is just a syrup cookie, essentially. And so the previous owners, Jan and Judy Boogman, he was Dutch. They actually have a University of Montana connection. This is really cool. They both went there, and then she ran track there, and then they ended up going overseas and running as well. So they have some U of M ties, but which I think helped allow us to buy it because they had multiple offers from different groups. And we went through kind of a rigorous process, and ultimately we won them over. But the two partners came to me. I'm a commercial banker, have been for 15 plus years, to, see if that's something I'd finance for them. And, I maybe it was too bold, but I said, I don't want to finance it. I'd love to be a partner. So it just kind of started this beautiful friendship and love affair that we have. And so the goal is, to leave the cafe as is. It's very wholesome, good ingredients, old school foods, everything made from scratch. And we didn't want to see that go away and be replaced with like another chain restaurant or something. So it was really important to us to keep the integrity of the restaurant. So all the staff is still there. They're amazing. We're not there every day, so we obviously rely heavily on them. And then the cookie machine itself is really cool. It's essentially mechanical, not electrical, and there's none of these in the world. It was made for them from the Netherlands. So, and that was actually in the restaurant, but it gets so hot in there and the cookies are so intensive to make that they'd have to bake from like 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then be out in time for the rush hour. So we've actually set up a manufacturing facility up kind of by the airport, and they had another machine in storage that actually fell off the truck when they were bringing it here. And so we brought that out of storage and we repurposed it, and had some help from some welders and engineers. One of my partners, her company has a helicopter business, and so we used a lot of their resources. So anyway, we built this, and we've got a warehouse, and we're slinging cookies out of there. And so we're really... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I love this. I love this entire concept. How in the world are you fitting in entrepreneurship with being a vice president of a bank, as well as the mother of 2 kids? How are you making all this work and being a wife?
Well, I'm probably failing on all fronts of it, but it's honestly so fun that we just make the time. Nights and weekends, but obviously my like any parent, the kids are the most important. And so that I want to make sure my time is allotted to them. So we squeeze it in. And honestly, with 3 of us, we kind of block and tackle. And, we each have our strengths and weaknesses. And so mine certainly isn't on machinery and equipment. So that's the other partner. And so I really focus on kind of the licensing, food safety, which I know nothing about, but I'm learning, and the financial, aspect of it. And we're, honestly, the Department of Agriculture has been a huge resource for us. You don't realize how many resources you have, even in this small state. So we've been very blessed, and we're just getting into the, really climbing out of a hole the last year. And then New York, when we've had so many people that are so willing to consult with us. And one of our mentors has been Robin Bakay. She owns Bakay Caramels out of Bozeman. And she was adamant that we go to this fancy food show and in New York. And so we did. And there's 2,300 vendors. It's talk about overwhelming. And so first day we were just we didn't know what we were doing. And then the second day we got a little more comfortable and started asking questions about, distribution, packaging. Krista, you're gonna have to help me with that. And that sort of thing. So it was, again, great trip to be in New York, but also it was educational for us for our little growing business. Yeah. And actually, if you guys want to go try them out, we just got into Missoula Shields. So you can get the Caramel Cookie Waffle at the checkout stands at Missoula.
Ooh, we'll have to go check that out.
I know.
I love it. So when going from Lewistown to Missoula to now Billings, and your roots are firmly planted over in Billings on the eastern side of the state. Talk about living in the largest city in Montana.
Yeah. So, I love it now. It did. I really miss the Missoula, the mountains, the access to the outdoors, but you can find it here. You just have to, it takes a little longer, right? The Beartooths are amazing. Chris and I try to get up there when we can. Red Lodge is a nice little reprieve, but Billings has a lot to offer, and I love that. It's got a strong financial district. You have kind of the oil and gas. You still have the agriculture component. You have the two, Rocky and MSUB, the two universities. So there's a lot of industrial, actually quite a bit of manufacturing. I bank a few of those. And so Billings is really, really robust. There's a lot of great arts and music and theater. And, I feel like there's a lot going on. The economy, unlike a Missoula or Bozeman, it's a little bit slow and steady. But as a conservative banker, I like that because it's a lot more predictable. But it's my husband's from here, and my family's mainly in Bozeman, some in Kalispell, and so it's harder to get there and go see them, and it's even hard to get back to Missoula. It's, even though it's not that far away. But I wish I was closer. But we've really embedded our place here and have a great group of friends, and I love what I do. So that makes all the difference in the world. Yeah.
Well, last question about the here and now, and then we'll get into some of the past stuff. But what sort of led you to the banking world? Because now you have this new sort of private business.
Yeah.
What led you to just working in banking?
Well, when I was at Missoula, I did management, and then that fifth year got a finance degree as well between fourth and fifth. So I really didn't know. I knew investment banking wasn't my thing. My father's a banker. His dad was a banker, and my great grandpa started a bank in the early 1900s in central Montana. So maybe it's in the blood. I don't know, but I certainly consulted with my dad a little bit, and I was able to get into a management trainee program at a bank right out of college. And that was really cool because it took you through all the facets of the bank. I didn't really know, at a small egg bank in central Montana, you have one teller, you have, one operations customer service person, and then you have, the lender was my dad, the bank president, and one other lender. So I didn't really know what banking looked like. And that was, that was huge to see all the different parts of the bank and the inner workings, and ultimately landed in a credit analyst position to understand how to look at people's financials and make a credit decision that, protects the bank, but also grows the bank at the same time. So that's what I was really drawn to.
Katie Edwards, our guest on our Where Are They Now? Krista Redpath in studio, and fun to hear what Katie's up to now. I love when people are, sort of entrenched in the world, which is a great thing. I mean, she's working in the finance world, working at the bank there in Billings. But then, she wants a new challenge, and that's awesome. And she's exploring a new challenge. This sounds pretty great, too. I want to try some of these, waffle cookies.
So good.
Oh, I bet they are.
You have to know them.
No, I definitely know. I just didn't know that was something that was, made in Billings, Montana. It's pretty cool that Katie Edwards is spearheading this.
I mean, she's very entrepreneurial, but
totally.
Just so many different hats that she's wearing.
No doubt.
It's really neat to see.
Well, let's talk about Katie Edwards in her younger days. Here's a little excerpt from our conversation about growing up rurally, Denton, Montana, and then moving to Lewistown. And I just found it so fascinating how many unbelievable athletes have come out of Lewistown, especially on the female side of things. I mean, you're talking multiple great Lady Griz. As she jokes, it's not Malta. You don't have 7 of them. But still, I mean, 3's pretty good when you talk about 3 great players in Katie Edwards, Macaulay Feller, and Sonia Rogers in between those two. I also found it fascinating that all 3 of them, I mean, that's 3 of probably the 6 or 7 best three-point shooters in school history. And you could probably argue that Sonia and Katie are the 2 best, right? So that's pretty amazing that they both were shooting in the same high school gym growing up.
They won a lot of games for the Lady Griz.
No doubt. And they also had a great volleyball legacy there in Lewistown. Fergus County High School is definitely a great place. So here's a little bit more from Katie Edwards on her background.
Katie, growing up, you started your high school basketball career for Denton. You had a lot of success, and then you moved over to Lewistown, Sioux Hobby area. I mean, everyone loves Sioux, right? So can you talk about making that transition from different classes and your experience in playing for Denton and Lewistown?
You bet, yeah. So, I mean, I went to Denton kindergarten through sophomore year. So it was home, and you're right. You had the same 10 to 12 kids in your class every year, and it was wonderful. It was literally an idyllic childhood, right? And I had, we didn't have travel teams back then, right? But you had your pockets of Big Sky State games, and then you went to camps, whether it was just locally or Carroll, Missoula, wherever, MSU. So that's really what we did in the summer. And then you'd have open gym with basically a bunch of farm guys, which was great, right? I think it was a test every Sunday, but and honestly, it wasn't. The move to Lewistown was never planned or even discussed. It kind of just happened. My older sister is, like I said, 2 older sisters. My middle one is 2 years older than me, and she was just graduating, and she was my best friend and was kind of my everything. And so with her leaving, we just kind of looked at it and talked about it as a family. Is this the time to make a change, kind of, and just start over and even academically, that was important to me too. There's just more to offer. I mean, great education in Denton too, but you don't have access to AP classes or anything like that. So it wasn't an exposure thing. It was really just a life change, to be honest. And I'm so grateful. Lewistown was amazing. They could have been, a little sheepish or, not very inviting, and they were the complete opposite. And not only just to me, but I mean, some of my parents' dear friends, they met in Lewistown. So very, very grateful. Honestly, Sue Hobby was so impactful of that decision, because I'd go in and play Sunday nights with them, in between that summer when I moved. And I think if it wasn't for Sue, I also probably wouldn't have made that move. And Ron Miller, I mean, he was supportive. He wasn't, recruiting or anything, but he knew it was a difficult decision. But Sue Hobby was extremely influential in that decision, and just being so supportive and has been to this day. But it honestly was as smooth as can be. I had the best time. I met a lot of different people, and they were so welcoming, and I'll always forever be grateful for that.
So Katie, I have to ask, you come from a Bobcat family. I also have Bobcat roots. Both my parents.
Yes, you do.
In fact, my dad would only wear Lady Griz gear when he was cheering for me playing. It had to say Lady Griz. But for you, was it always the Lady Griz, or did you consider other options as the recruiting process heated up in your latter years of high school?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And no, I'd never even been to Missoula, because that wasn't allowed. So until I think, honestly, my junior or senior year, my dad, played for the Cats in the 70s, had a successful career. And so we were Bobcats through and through. I mean, there was just no, nothing around that. Obviously with cousin John, playing there, that made things a little different. Of course, we supported him and my dad especially, but it still just wasn't in the cards. I always had dreamed of playing for the Bobcats. And so luckily they had some coaching issues going on at the time. And, total testament to the character of my father and putting, obviously, our dreams ahead of his own. He was like, you got to go look at Missoula, right? A chance to, even talk to Coach Selvig is miraculous. And so he's the one that really spurred those discussions, because I felt guilty, right? I didn't want to let him down. And he made that very clear early on that should be a non-negotiable and not to consider where he played 30 years ago. So, and then it just felt right. I remember, Julie Deming was my host, and how do you not go play with her, right? And Brooklyn and those guys. So it once I got there, I just felt like it was home, and it was a very easy decision. Yeah.
I was Julie's host, so here we go with the various eras of Lady Griz. So it just continues here.
Yeah, well, you taught her well. Yeah.
Former Lady Griz, Katie Edwards, our guest on our Where Are They Now series, presented by Ryan and Miller Locke. And Katie, I love what makes small towns in Montana tick. And some towns, like Troy's a mining town, Colstrip is a mining town. You know that, right? There's others that are like timber towns. Lewistown has a little bit of everything, though, right? There's some agriculture, there's some forestry, timber, all that. There's some mining. There's all sorts of that sort of stuff. So I guess 2-part question. How would you describe Lewistown when you were living there growing up? And then secondly, how do you think that influenced you just in general in your life, both as an athlete and otherwise?
You bet. So, really, I mean, Lewistown was about 36 miles from our house. So I grew up 5 miles south of town. We didn't have, a ranch or a farm by any means, but we did grow up doing 4-H, which was really impactful. We started with pigs, and then we escalated to steers, and so it was definitely an ag community by far. And again, we saw all of our friends and neighbors, harvest, obviously, and spring planting and calving, just the things that make everyone tick. And I think the difference in those small towns is, those kids work. Football school started late, and football was really early mornings, and then they practiced like late at night. Same with basketball, because these kids had to harvest. That's right in the heart of the harvest time. So I think the work ethics are, unmatched. These kids are literally a part of the family operation, and they work their tails off. So I think seeing that and growing up around that, and always appreciating that, had a huge impact on us of what that means to not only like chip in with the family, but you also help neighbors, right? If someone has a fire, everyone's over there helping, or if someone's sick and can't harvest, the whole community comes together and helps that individual. So it's complete community minded, and I love that. And outside of that is, everything's centered around sports, right? Everyone goes to at that time it was Saturday afternoon football games, and then everyone goes to the game that night, the basketball games. So just that whole sense of community and how important that is, I think was a huge takeaway from that. And then, going into Lewistown, it was a little bit different because that's the city, right? And we didn't really recreate, honestly. A lot of the farm people don't, because they don't have time to go hiking or fishing or do those sort of things. But I did a little bit more of that when I got into Lewistown and met some friends that enjoyed kind of the outdoors of Lewistown a lot more. But it still has the same heart, right, of Central Montana, that it's the ranchers and farmers that make those communities tick. So it's just the hard work, dedication, and you got to also have a lot of time management and some grit, right? Nothing comes easy, and weather can change, that income for that person for the entire year, that family. And so it's just a lot of heart and soul in those communities for sure.
Small Town Montana in a nutshell. It's our Where Are They Now series presented by Ryan and Miller Locke. At Ryan and Miller, Paul Ryan and Angie Miller truly care about their clients and their community. It's important that their firm can help out local Montanans and surrounding communities. Every year, they find ways to give back to the community and support the community. The list is over 100 local organizations that the law firm supports. Every year, they proudly put together their backpacks for kids in the community to donate school supplies to local students. I know they've helped out with a bunch of your stuff as well, Krista.
You can't even count the community organizations that Paul Ryan and Angie Miller and the entire firm have gotten involved in, from my son's Quiz Bowl tournament and having Paul come in and speak to them about the true testament of working hard at school. He's supported every single baseball team that my kids were a part of all the way through, and every kid's parents, have probably talked with Paul about baseball, but very, very giving with the community.
Our Where Are They Now series presented by Ryan and Miller Law, back for a third season. This is our third episode of season 3. Talking with Katie Edwards, a Denton/Lewistown, Montana native who then went on to be one of the great shooters in the history of Lady Griz basketball, top 10 in school history in scoring, one of the great three-point shooters ever for the Lady Griz. But Krista, one of the more memorable moments of the modern generation came when Katie was playing for the Lady Griz.
Well, definitely. She's probably going to elaborate on this in our next segment, but the 2004 Lady Griz season, with getting that number 12 seed and being able to host. You have Louisiana Tech that's coming in to Dahlberg Arena as a number 5 seed. It was sold out arena. Just the environment was just incredible. On that specific team, there were 8 Montana girls on that roster. So you look at that culture, and we've talked about, Montana fans really getting behind those players, and they just had a squad. You go down, Julie Deming, Holly Tyler, Katie, Crystal Baird, Brooklyn Lorenzen, Julianne Keller, Jody McLeod. It just didn't drop off at all.
For sure.
And I just, that was such a moment as a Lady Griz. I was finished with my career, and I was more of a fan sitting next to Carla Beatty-Canine and watching that. And it was so close, came down to the wire. Lady Griz didn't prevail, but it was certainly an amazing game.
A spectacular moment in the history of Dahlberg Arena and Lady Griz basketball. Here's more with Katie Edwards.
So, Katie, you had a lot of success in your high school years. I think you made something like 60 consecutive free throws, which is still a record for actually Montana. That's so amazing. Coach Selvig would just be so proud to hear that. Can you talk about a favorite high school memory?
Ooh, that's a great question. I remember the shot I missed. I think it was at divisionals when I broke the streak, but that's more painful than anything, that's what you always remember, the bad. But, honestly, I'd say it was I I mean, naturally, it's the state championship that we ultimately won my senior year, which was so cool because at the time, again, football was played in the fall as well. And the Lewistown boys were playing for the state championship up in Whitefish. They won, and then everyone drove down the whole town, to Hamilton for the state championship there and watch the girls team. So it was so cool having the football team there, and our band. Everyone drove, made the trek from Whitefish to support us. So that's ultimately, and that one was interesting because that was probably the worst game of my career, but it was the most impactful because that it was the team rose up, right? You get all the accolades and the name and the lights that year, and we had a really good team, and it was hard because that was never really highlighted. And so to me, be on the bench and then win it the last few minutes, I've never been so excited in my life because they did it, and it was awesome. And I was so proud of that I was on the bench when that team took over and won that game.
It was an overtime win, correct?
It was, incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, my fellow senior Megan just took over, and a freshman was playing in my position, and she, I remember the timeout, she was just shaking, and I just grabbed her little shoulders, and I'm like, just laughing, and she's like, "What? You're going crazy?" And I'm like, "Just have fun. This is amazing," And they did it, and I was that was the most important moment in my career.
Katie, I look at your college career, and I have access to all the Lady Griz record books, and we know that we played with some incredible players in the years that we played across many different eras. I will go out on a limb to say I think you were the best three-point shooter in the history of the Lady Griz. I think J.E. Miller-McGraw had a great year this year. She's a prolific shooter. But when I look at the fact that consecutively over 3 years, 60 threes, 66 threes, 53 threes, all of that is amazing when you look at your career. But you and I both know that what sticks is the relationships and the teammates and the trips that you take together and those bonds.
You mentioned Sonia Rogers. I remember writing a story about you, Sonia, Macaulay Feller, and there was one other Lewistown girl. But there's something like, I think there's only like 6 or 7 Lady Griz that ever hit over 200 threes in their careers, and 3 of them are from Lewistown. Why? How is that? Like, how is 3 of the best shooters?
Water? You drinking different water?
That's really crazy to think about, though, that like 3 of the most prolific three-point shooters in the history of the league are from like a 4,000 person town.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, we're not, we don't have the Malta statistics, but certainly, I think it's the Big Spring water, the clean water in Lewistown. It's got to be it.
It is pretty cool, though, to really think about it. I mean, do you think that's sort of just like an extension of just the I don't know, just sort of the love of sport in a small town, and also just, that's one of the only things to do, right? It's like Rob Selvig always says, what else was I going to do in Outlook, Montana, besides go to the gym and shoot?
Oh, absolutely. I think, again, there's not much else to do, but I also think, when you have people to look up to, right, and see that success, I think is huge. And again, I go back to Sue Hobby, and then she kind of, again, I grew up following the Lady Bobcats, so I was always mad at Krista when they would kick, when they would win. And so, but, you knew who they were. And so just Sue kind of, ingrained that legacy into me a little bit. And so you have kind of these mentors and role models that you looked up to, and you wanted to be like them. And you really did. And you knew that took a lot of work. And so I think seeing, other girls of success from small towns in Montana was also a motivator, right? Which Rob was so good at doing, and giving them that chance and seeing their success, I think gave you that confidence to believe in yourself that you could be one of those.
Former Lady Griz Katie Edwards, our guest on our Where Are They Now series, presented by Ryan and Miller Law, co-hosted by Krista Redpath.
Your sophomore season was incredible. You finished 27-4, and you got the opportunity as a 12 seed to host number 5 seed Louisiana Tech, which to this day is still one of my favorite Lady Griz memories. I sat next to Carla Beatty-Canine for that game, sold out arena in Dahlberg. It still gives me the chills to even think about that game. Katie, you had so many weapons that year. I mean, I could go down the list. Julie, Holly, you, Crystal, Brooklyn, Julianne, Jody. It was arguably one of the better Lady Griz teams Can you talk about that environment of getting a chance to play in front of a sold out crowd in Dahlberg Arena?
Oh, it was the energy in that building. You literally, Brooklyn described it, I think, in the documentary. Like, you couldn't hear, you couldn't even think. The floor was shaking, I think, right before we went into halftime. And then, of course, Julie just went off, which we knew she could, right? You've seen her talent, and seeing her rise up and just take over that thing was remarkable. And we banded together. We played so well, and we came so close. That one still haunts me to this day. It's one of those games, Krista, that you just knew you were going to win, right? You felt just that it was going to happen. And so that, I think, was the most crushing part of that. But the way that the Lady Griz fans showed up, supported us, again, you couldn't even think. It was the coolest thing. And the fun thing was to see the La Tech girls. And they were just shocked. I mean, they couldn't believe the following that we had and the fans. And, they, of course, said it after the game as well. But they were saying that when we were on the court. They were like, these people are crazy. And they really were. And so it was absolutely, that was definitely a highlight of my Lady Griz career for sure. Because it was such a cool environment that, you're not going to have again in that type of setting in the tournament.
We ask this to so many of the former players, but what do you think specifically made your group special? 'Cause your guys' group was so interesting too, because you had so much success, and then you kind of passed it along to the younger girls like Sonia and Brittany and Mandy, and they had so much success as well. So, what made that whole time just filled with so much winning at Montana?
God, leadership. And to be honest, Julie set that tone of I don't think it'd be hard to find a Lady Griz that was as that proud to be a Lady Griz as Julie. Right, Krista? She just embodied it, and she made it cool. Does that make sense? I think by nature, we're all fairly, everybody is, right? With fairly humble individuals, and she made us want to yell from our lungs that we're Lady Griz, right? She made it cool. And at least for my generation, I know that, she was the one that kept the legacy on from her seniors and people ahead of her, but she really delivered that message down to us, and that stuck. So between her and Brooklyn, they were the leaders, and they made sure that we knew the expectation was to win, and that's it. And so there really wasn't any discussion around that. They set the tone with the way they worked out, the way that they presented themselves, and the way that they carried themselves and represented the Lady Griz. And so I think that starts at the top, as with anything, and it has to continue down. And that's what they did, and they instilled that in all of us.
And that makes me feel good, Katie, because I feel like I hope I set that tone for Julie. You can see those young players tune in, and there is something to be said about stepping on the floor and knowing that you're better, or knowing that you're going to compete. And I think that is something that was very key in generations with the Lady Griz program, of making sure we handed that down to the next group that came in.
And you did. And Julie talked about that, right? Like, we're not going to be the group that F's this up, right? and she did. And honestly, as we interact with you guys, right, you kind of joke about, and we're so good to us, but also, I remember Linda, with the side eye, don't screw this up, right? It's a love, and it came from a big sister, and it was, you don't want to let Rob down, but we also don't want to let everyone else down that came before us. But it's also not forced, if that makes sense, because that doesn't work either, right? And it's amazing how all those generations that carried, not in a forced way, but in a true influential way, that this is how we operate here, because that's an easy thing to crack, right? It can stop quickly, but that's what's so remarkable about this, these teams and this program, is that continued to carry and has for so long.
I always think about the fact that our program is so unique because of having Coach Selvig for so many consecutive years. Honestly, we were running the same plays year after year after year. Pressure, fist. I could just say these things out there. I think everyone scouted them. But what's unique is we all had similar memories because our coaching staff was the same.
Yeah. Yep. No, and there's no doubt, right? He's the the glue, and the assistants are the glue that kept all that together, right? You know, Trisha, Annette, Shannon. I mean, it's all of them. And we're so fortunate for that. And I think that's really going to be hard to, I think, come by going forward, just in the environment of the NCAA. And so, we are so blessed. And, there's a lot that didn't change, with him over the years, but why it worked, right? And it miraculously did. And I'm sure, of course, he adapted to players and personalities and things like that. But in general, his methodology worked. And it's pretty remarkable to think about that over that long of, 35, 36 years.
Our Where Are They Now series featuring Katie Edwards, former Lady Griz, a Lewistown, Montana product. Fergus County High School, I should say, Denton, Montana product, but a Fergus County High School product there in Lewistown. Our guest, Chris Redpath, in studio with us. Our Where Are They Now series proudly presented by Ryan and Miller Law. Ryan and Miller Law has a new practicing attorney, Abigail Coburn, who is passionate about fighting systematic injustices in the criminal justice system and has a proven track record of high client satisfaction. She zealously defends her clients' constitutional and statutory rights and excels in negotiating, courtroom advocacy, legal research, and legal writing. Prior to law school at the University of Montana, Abigail earned her Bachelor of Science degree at Carroll College, where she was also a collegiate soccer player. Ryan and Miller, proud to welcome Abigail Coburn to the firm. One of our common themes here on our Where Are They Now is asking our former, especially women's basketball players, about the Caitlin Clark effect. Krista and I have talked about this extensively, so let's let Katie Edwards talk about it.
One theme, Katie, of our summer series is to discuss and dialogue the Caitlin Clark effect, or the movement in America, as I like to say, along with other impactful players. But I want to discuss why America is so captivated, but I think everyone wants to know, you had a chance encounter where you met Caitlin Clark. Can you tell our listeners and viewers about this experience?
Yes. Oh, it was amazing. So my dad and I had been talking in, I think, October, let's see if we can go see her. And we wanted to see her in Iowa City. None of us had been. So we just threw a date on the books. It worked for me. I think it was over actually Valentine's Day, and it worked for Mom and Dad. So we fly out. They flew up from Arizona. We met in Cedar Rapids and then drove over to Iowa City. So it was a quick trip. Fly in, games the next day, fly home the next day. Well, we stayed right on campus basically, and so we walked over to make sure we knew where to get to the game that night. And we found our way around. I wanted to go in, to the athletic center, if you will, and just see where things were. And so we wandered around a little bit, and Dad decided to head back, and Mom and I stuck around and snooped around a little bit. And we're just leaving, and we come out of the parking lot, and it's really not it's a kind of unassuming gym. Parking's horrible. There's not a lot of parking around, and it's a underground, it's a bowl. And so anyway, we're just walking out of the main parking lot, and I see her. I see her boyfriend first. He's really tall. And I just screamed, and I go, "Oh my God." And my mom, doesn't have a clue. And then she finally sees her. So we just walked towards her, and I wasn't going to bug her. But I had my phone out, and I was kind of looking at it, and we finally made eye contact, and she just kind of looked like, "I know, come on over." And so I was like, "I'm so sorry. I know you have obviously a big game tonight," which was the game she was set to break the record, right? And she was so gracious, and I was fumbling with my phone because I can't do a selfie. We take the selfie, and I just wished her good luck, and she walked off. I mean, it was a really brief interaction. My mom would have stayed and chatted with her, I'm sure, or she was trying to, but it was incredible. She's tall, taller than I thought she'd be. And I just couldn't believe it. And then to be there that night, I mean, talk about electric. That gym was Louisiana Tech style, is what it really reminded. And honestly, we got emotional, my parents and I, because it kind of brought back memories of just that environment. I look over at one point, my dad's tearing up, my mom's crying. Like it was incredible. And just to see that environment in women's basketball, like I said, I hadn't felt or seen since Louisiana Tech. So it was a full circle, just this is what she's done. And then just talking to people around us too. And it's the whole team, right? I mean, she's obviously, the most discussed athlete, I would say, in the last year. but she had a great team around her, great coaching, I mean, all of that. And then the support from the community. We were talking to this row in front of us, and it was probably a group of like 40 to 45-year-old men. And they said that 3 years ago, they gave up their men's season tickets and got women's season tickets. And so to hear that, you know, just like how much they're behind this team, and they were going to the next week's tournament. I mean, they are following these girls and so supportive. It just kind of hit. And I think that brought some of the emotional nature out of you know, there have been amazing women's basketball players for a long time, but to finally see the support that I think they deserve was incredible. In fact, a couple people in front of us they knew Maggie Eston-Miller-McGraw's parents, or they knew her, and they knew she was at the University of Montana. So it was, you know, think of that small connection in Iowa City. I think they were from Des Moines. Isn't that where she's from?
Yes.
And so met some people that knew her, and it was so cool. But again, just to see and listen around you of what she was doing to that sport, you know, it was kind of emotional.
America has been captivated by Caitlin Clark. Yeah. And part of Coulter and I have gone back and forth on the discussion of whether or not she is the greatest basketball player. Coulter will interject his opinion.
Okay.
More so than that, I want to talk about the fact that she stayed with one school for 4 years. She told her coach, Lisa Bluter, we're going to the Final Four. In a era or a time frame for us where the transfer portal is a part of everyone's reality, and it's like, what are you going to do for me? Where is the next move for me personally? She invested in her program. And to hear you talk about the environment, I believe that those fans invested in her, and it's a relationship. And I think that's part of why America is so intrigued by her. You look at the Indiana Fever right now. I mean, they're not doing great. They're ninth in the standings. But you notice her, she's just clipping along. She's continuing to play hard. She's continuing to put in the effort. And it seems like everything she does, she just backs up with her work ethic.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I've followed pretty closely, you know, since she's been in the WNBA, and it's mixed feelings, right? I mean, I think, you know, I feel like she can't really do anything right or wrong, right? Or she can't do anything right in a sense, but she's young. I think there's so much maturity that has to happen, right? Some of her antics on the floor, I disagree with. You're going to foul someone, and you're going to get a call, and you're not going to get a call sometimes, right? And that's going to come with maturity and coaching and all of that. But I also think last game she had 13 assists. I mean, I think when you watch her in person, I think the other thing that was so huge to see was how she sees the floor. And we got to say after the celebration, and I think they showed the clip later too, but where her teammates talked about her too, and how she knows they're open before they do, and how hard it was for a lot of them to adapt to her. And, you know, they back up the work ethic. They back up, like, her antics she's not mad at anybody else. She's talking to herself. Like, she's her biggest critic. And she's very hard on herself, but like she does expect a lot from them. But watching her and the way she moves and how she sees the floor was actually way more impressive than the scoring. And that was the most fun to see, that I feel like you can kind of miss on TV. And because you have the bigger picture, right? You can see where she's going to kind of go. And that was, even my parents did the same thing. I mean, she can score willingly, right? And you know, if she can get a mid-range game down, I think she's going to be even tougher. But the way that she makes those around her better, I think was really, really neat to see. But she's got some maturing to do, no doubt. You know, it's amazing I think people are enamored by it, honestly, too, Krista, because she stayed there. I mean, you also have a Paige Beckers, right, that is probably going to have, I think, a similar impact. Very similar player. And so it's fun to see. And again, not only that, I mean, look at the South Carolina group. All these players are so good. Obviously, Caitlin's attention was different because she was breaking records, right? And I think that's what sometimes people forget about, is like, well, she got all this attention, and it's like, well, right, she just broke records. She earned it. Not that these other girls haven't, but I think we'd be talking about Angel Reese or anyone else if that was kind of the case. But I mean, the WNBA viewership, I mean, I've got friends' dads that are buying the subscriptions and they haven't watched basketball in 20 years. That's the things that I hear, that I don't care if it's Caitlin or not, they're engaged in the sport. And that is what I love the most, to be honest.
Katie, I think that's one thing. She is a prolific passer, and her ball faking is incredible. I do want to bring up an individual accolade that you have. You still have the record for the most three-point field goals made against Sac State back in 2005. One thing that I remember about you is such a quick release, and you were unassuming. You'd pull, and sometimes I'd be like, how did she get that off? But she did. Caitlin Clark is very similar. She's got the stroke. Do you see some of yourself in her? I mean, you have similar styles of play.
No. I mean,
yes, Katie.
I had to do that because I couldn't dribble and I was a really crappy passer. So I had one option. Like, that's it.
Imagine Rob's reaction. Imagine Rob's reaction, though, if you would have pulled up from the logo.
Oh, he would have killed me, and rightfully so. And I always tease Rob, too, that, like, I liked taking her on the three-point line because I was the slowest, so I could get back on defense faster into my little spot on the top of the zone. So I was very strategic, but that was my only option, Krista.
You had the green light, Katie. It's pretty neat to watch.
I am, blessed to have the green light sometimes. But, the best, when you'd launch it and you'd hear first thing out of Rob's mouth was, no, and then if you made it, it was like he didn't even say that. Yeah, he was the first. I'm like, you just told me not to shoot that, but you'll take it.
Just about the influence of the three-point shot, both on the game in general, but also sort of in the Big Sky. Because, I've talked to many coaches about this, and basically everybody in the league realized, okay, when the Lady Griz are at their powers, at the height of their powers, the only way we're going to beat that zone is by finding as many shooters as we can. I know John Newley built his teams like that.
Yeah.
Seton Sobolewski basically tried to say, okay, we're going to just play man defense as hard as they play zone defense. But you look around the league, and it's either you're trying to figure out a way to beat Montana or you're trying to figure out a way to be like Montana. So, what do you think of just the impact the Lady Griz had on the modern era of the Big Sky?
Oh, I'd like to think we had an impact on that because, that zone, when it was truly, you remember that, Krista, when it was like truly feeling that you were in one motion.
Magic.
It was magic. And Rob could coach that and perfect that beautifully. And there was not a better feeling than that. And that'd be very difficult to play against, right? Whether you're a good shooter or not, you didn't have gaps to fill that. So, whether we impacted that or not, I don't know. But if we did, I'd be very proud of that because that when that thing was running, it was very hard to get through. That's for sure.
Now that your career is in the rear view a little bit and you're embarked on this whole other new life, how much do you think just your time at Montana, but also Lewistown, Denton, all that, how much has that influenced you and how has it influenced you?
Oh, I think it's probably the most impactful part of your life, right? Outside of maybe childhood, but that all kind of comes full circle too. So, the time of Montana teaches you so much, that culture, back to even the importance of community in rural Montana. Lady Griz is a community, and to have that backstop and that support in your life, whether it's in your face or it's on the peripheral, like we're there for each other, and so just to have that support, I think, is also huge. And then sports, I think in general, obviously, but the importance of time management, the importance of teamwork, the importance of working together for that common goal. All those things translates further into life, right? It's the workforce. There are companies that sometimes mainly only hire athletes because of those attributes that they have and the way that they can work together, work hard, get through difficult decisions, and handle rejection and adversity. I think that's something that also you forget about. Like, not everything was great, right? You had a lot of really down times and really sad times and adversity to get through, and that made you resilient. And I think that translates all throughout life. Parenthood, same thing. That's really hard at times, but it gives you the tools to be able to navigate those times in your life so much better. And then again, to rely on that family network that you have, to reach out or ask for help or anything like that, I think is unparalleled for sure.
certainly somebody that's done as much as anybody to introduce the world to women's basketball. It's funny because I know Krista and I have gone back and forth about this quite a bit, and I'm always pressing and just saying, hey, Caitlin Clark's not the GOAT of anything, but that's only because she's so young. She has the opportunity to be, for sure, but she is certainly the tipping point, and that's perhaps more important for the WNBA. And it's fun to hear the recollections of these older players.
Well, and if she can bring more awareness and more fans to this league, and if you listen to Caitlin Clark in any of her interviews, she's humble, she grinds, she works hard, she's willing to put in that time, Coulter, and she hasn't asked for some of that stardom. Her records have obviously given her that platform, but her play is pretty exceptional.
Appreciate Katie Edwards for joining us here on our Where Are They Now. It's fun catching up with her, and great backstory with a great message. You know, the working class backgrounds from these small Montana towns is sort of the tie that binds for many of these Where Are They Now subjects. Also appreciate Krista for co-hosting with me today, and also appreciate Ryan and Miller Law for their continued support of our Where Are They Now series. Ryan and Miller, your Montana attorneys, are dedicated to providing their clients with the best representation. They work as a team to provide one-of-a-kind legal services for each of their clients. Their team works hard to ensure their clients get the compensation they deserve after being in a car accident. Consultations are always free, so call anytime 24/7, 406-542-2233 to discuss your case. You can also visit RyanMillerLaw.com.